ॐ ज्ञानं तिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददति स्वापदन्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपां साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवम् श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुस्तुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। And chapter 6 light here. So we're now entering another section of the Nectar of Devotion. This is chapter 6 through 12. And in this chapter initiates a new section in the Nectar Devotion. It is a list of 64 ways to practice pure devotional service, sadhana bhakti. Chapters 7 to 12 elaborate on each of the items listed in chapter 6. So this chapter is going to be a very long list. It's people say, well, what is devotional service? So here it is, all 64 items of pure devotional service. And then in subsequent chapters, Rupa Goswami starts to highlight which ones are most important, which ones are most potent, and which are positive regulations, which are negative, which are positive rules, which are negative regulations, meaning things that you do and things that you don't do. So this is the gradual, you could say, unveiling of the details, but as they say, the most important details. The devil is in the details, right? How the actual practice of devotional services. This is the unveiling of that process of devotional service and the 64 items of devotional service. 64 limbs of devotional service and practice. Items 1 through 64 are list only, chapter 6. Items 1 through 18, chapter 7 is the explanation of items 1 through 18. Chapter 8 is just item 19 explained. So an important one there as well. Chapter 9 is 20 to 42 explained. Chapter 10 is 43 to 46 explained. Chapter 11 is 47 to 53 explained. And chapter 12 is 54 to 64 explained. So, we will see how these unveil there's some items that are most important, 3 items that are most important, and 5 items that are most potent. So that also is going to be part of this discussion. Items 1 through 10 are primary regulated principles. 11 to 20 are secondary regulated principles. And 21 to 64 are other activities of devotional service. So the 64 items of sadhana bhakti, 20 items of primary importance, 10 activities to accept, and 11 to 20 activities to avoid. Right? So, so as I mentioned to you, there's some that you have to accept and some that you have to avoid. So here's another breakdown. So though the chapters were divided like that, but now we said, how these are primary and regulated, secondary. So the first 20 are most kind of primary importance. 10 things that are very important to do and 10 things that are important to avoid. And then there's 44 additional items of service. 21 to 59 are items of sadhana. And 60 to 64, the last 5 are the 5 most effective items of devotional service. So even though these 5 are not part of the list of 20, the 20 is of primary importance, but the last 5 are the most effective items of devotional service. So here we go now. We start with chapter 6. Srila Rupa Goswami lists the 64 items of devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami proposes to mention only basic principles, not details. For example, a basic principle is that one has to accept a spiritual master. Exactly how one follows the instructions of a spiritual master is considered a detail. So even these items are basic principles. There's so many details and intricacies in understanding how to perform devotional service that we apply on a day-to-day basis. Not all of that is being discussed. And like the last 5 items are the most potent items of devotional service, the first 3 are the most important items of devotional service. As explained in the definition of pure devotional service, bhakti is an activity cultivated, shilanam, in 2 ways: positive pravritti and negative nivritti. The items 1 through 10 are things to do, pravritti. Doing these things strengthens one's underlying foundation of pure devotional service. Items 11 to 20 are things to avoid. Without avoiding these things, one's devotional foundation will become corrupt and decay. Altogether, these first 20 items build and maintain the underlying foundation of pure devotional service. By instilling a devotional disposition in the heart and protecting against non-devotional inclinations, these 20 items prepare the ground for effectively practicing the other parts of sadhana. So devotional service is, bhakti is a a um, a intention, a sentiment of the heart. However, devotional service is established, is solidified by the practices of devotional service. It doesn't come just by itself. You can't just, um, you know, just expect that it'll come by some random process. Devotional service has a science. There's a process which makes us advance in spiritual life, that elevates us in spiritual life. Altogether, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions 20 items, and all of them are very important. Out of the 20 items, the first three, namely accepting the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, number one, taking initiation from him, number two, and serving him with respect and reverence, are the most important. Accepting the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, taking initiation from him, and serving him with respect and reverence. If you notice in our ISKCON society, these are the three things that we do. The same process Prabhupada has established. Just yesterday, I was hearing a lecture from Guru Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and he says that Srila Prabhupada, the exact words were, he said he never taught, Prabhupada never gave us instructions that the previous acharyas had not given. He based everything that he taught on the basis of what the previous acharyas gave. So it wasn't even Srila Prabhupada, who was a Satyavish avatar, who could have just given what he was revealed to him, but to show us by example the importance of following the parampara system by not acting independently, but working in a community of acharyas and following, following the parampara. Our parampara is so exalted. He based everything on their instructions. And here we see that the whole process of initiation in ISKCON, which Srila Prabhupada established, is based on Srila Rupa Goswami. That first we accept the shelter of a spiritual master. So that's taking shelter, right? Before initiation, about 6 months before, the disciple expresses their intention of wanting to take shelter of a spiritual master who's an elevated soul. And that taking shelter is based upon a relationship that's cultivated over time. And after taking shelter, that relationship is further deepened. And then taking initiation, step 2. So he distinguishes between these two stages. It's not, well, take initiation, it will shelter, no, he distinguishes between these two. And then once you take shelter, then you take initiation, and then, well, okay, then it's done because I've taken initiation. No, and then serving the spiritual master with respect. So prior to initiation, and then post-initiation, which is the serving part and hearing part, hearing and serving the spiritual master. So these are very important principles, and it's very important for us to read Rupa Goswami. And he puts these three in the beginning. So what does that suggest to you in terms of the relationship of initiation and the process of bhakti? Because like the 5 most potent items, he could have put this at the end, but he puts this right in the beginning. So what might this suggest about the relationship between initiation and the process of bhakti? Anyone?
These indicate the start of devotional service.
Yes, these indicate the start of devotional service. Very good. Very good. Anyone else?
They form a foundation.
They form a foundation, a basis. Yes, very nice.
Devotional, they are important.
Very good. Yes.
Devotional service cannot be done whimsically, but it has to be done through a disciplic succession where there is a path, there are some rules, and there is a process that has been established, followed by previous acharyas or previous souls, great souls who have followed it and achieved it, and then only we can achieve the same.
Yes. Yes.
Uh,
Very nice.
it
Yes.
connects us to the parampara, Guru parampara.
It connects us to the parampara. Yes. Very nice.
Also, the Anartha Nivriti phase, we start by doing chanting and following these things. So, pre-initiation, we have just started, and from initiation, we learn how to actually be in connection with the Guru, getting that mood of serving the machine, and then go ahead little more. So, before initiation and after initiation, there is a lot of difference in
Yes.
what we are doing, like getting an direct authority of the mantra from the
Yes.
Guru.
Yes. Very nice.
I think this is the Guru is the medium of connection between
Yes.
us and the soul and Krishna.
Yes. Very nice. So all of these are related and um, all correct. Very nice. Thank you. One of the things that we can see is that these three things form the beginning of our devotional life, right? So oftentimes we feel, rightfully so, that when we get initiated, I've made it, right? And that's the hallmark of a devotee, and now I'm uh, close to Krishna. Very true. At the time of Diksha, the Lord accepts that devotee as good as himself because he's taken shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. However, what we're seeing and what we're learning is that it is the beginning of devotional service. At the time of initiation, everything starts. So, and that relates with all of your answers. What Prabhu had said that, to do devotional service, we don't do it whimsically. We cannot do it just based on what comes to our mind. Why? Because we need the guidance of a spiritual master. And so it begins with that guidance. Similarly, others said, this is where spiritual life begins, when the spiritual master gives the holy name to the devotee. So in so many ways, it's the beginning. We receive the mantra, we receive the instructions, we formally make commitments. And that's why we then practice rigidly, because then we don't falter, we don't go up and down. Before initiation, we may chant one day and we may skip the other day, but after that, we don't. Our practice becomes fixed. So all of these items that you had mentioned, they all start, or they all become solidified, or they all flourish with initiation. And then spiritual life really begins. So, so we should not become disheartened. We should understand that when we got initiated, that was the beginning of spiritual life. Now, actually, our Bhakti Lata Beach, our spiritual life is starting. And, it's going to take a now lifetime of developing our spiritual life after initiation. So if we're not initiated, we should be very eager to get initiated and move forward in the process. Because if spiritual life begins from the time of initiation, then when will we begin? Right? When will we begin? We have to start at some point, and we should not delay. The spiritual master can delay. The spiritual master is in no hurry, but we should be very eager. Why should we delay? Of course, we should carefully select the spiritual master, and that's also a discussion in Rupa Goswami's books, especially Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, where he encourages us to find an Uttamadhikari spiritual master. So for that, we have to take some time and examine the spiritual master. Prabhupada actually says in one place, and this is not pride, this is just due diligence, that in the year of that period where the waiting period, the spiritual master is examining the disciple, and the disciple is also examining the spiritual master. Because after this, they need to become very serious and follow their instructions. He says, after initiation, he must say, yes, sir. He cannot say, no, spiritual master, I won't do this. So he says, make your decision with due diligence. But don't take too long, because if you take too long, then you might miss the boat, right? And there's so many stories about acharyas where just they missed, getting initiation. The spiritual master passed away from the world and they were crying, or, so there's also an eagerness for that. But the eagerness also means that we carefully accept someone who we know we can follow their instructions. So yes, very good. Out of these 64 items, 5 items, namely worshiping the deity, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating among the devotees, Sankirtan, and living in Mathura, are very potent. So we'll come to this. Deity, worshiping the deity, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating devotees, chanting the holy name, and living in the Dham are the 5 most potent items of devotional service. And these will be discussed extensively in chapters 12 and 13. So we're getting to that. So yes, so many chapters. We're on 6, and these 64 items continue on until chapter 13. And now things go faster also because we have a list of items. There's less philosophical discussions, and so we'll hopefully cover things faster. I know I always say that, but hopefully we will actually. The 64 items of devotional service should include all of our activities of body, mind, and speech. So what's the purpose of so many items? Only one item, we can go back to Godhead, right? Just by chanting the holy name, we can go back to Godhead. But we have these 64 items because these 64 items are needed, especially on the neophyte stage, because we cannot chant 24 hours a day. We don't have that taste. So we may find we need a variety of devotional services so that 24 hours a day, our body, mind, and speech are absorbed in Krishna service. The first 10 injunctions, most important, are A, take shelter of a guru, B, take diksha and shiksha, C, serve the guru. The second 10 prohibitions, so this is just the 3 of the first 10, but the second are A, the second are the prohibitions, and then the remaining 44 angas, the remaining 44, so 20 are covered, the 44 are angas of devotional service, where the first of those, first section of those 44, which are 11 items, are items that engage the whole body physically. This is so interesting. So I know it looks like a, kind of a detailed list, but it's actually very interesting. It's been divided like this, where the 44 items, certain items are meant to engage certain aspects of our physical being, physical and mental being, mind, body, words. So 11 items are for the physical body. 5 items are for the voice. 2 are for taste. Imagine 2 items particularly. 1 is for smell. 1 is for touch. 2 items for sight. 1 item for hearing. 9 items for the mind. Most important, fixing the mind on Krishna. 4 items for Tadiya Seva, the articles of the Lord. And 3 items are mixed. And then 5 most important items are repeated in the 64 list. So actually those 5 items come twice because they're so important in the list of 64. And then we have the glorification of the 5 prominent angas, which we said this is Murti, Bhagavatam, Krishna Bhakta, Nama, and Mathura Mandala. So by the end, hopefully you can try to identify which items go with the, the body, the voice, and all these things. So that was chapter 6. So as I was mentioning, it was probably the first day since we started Nectar Devotion, we will cover 2 chapters at least. So chapter 7, here are the first 18 items of devotional service. The 10 pravrittis, the do's, and the first 8 nivrittis, don'ts, are further explained. So not all 20, we don't get to all 20, but we'll get to the first 18 items. So the first 3 items where we are coming, so important, we're coming back to them. Guru introduces one to all the other items of sadhana and guides the disciple in their application. Thus, without accepting guidance from the spiritual master, proper execution of the remaining 61 items of sadhana bhakti is not possible. So, in fact, the Guru introduces us to the details, to the subtleties of devotional service, and to the essentials. And they do it in different ways, right? One way is through their classes, through their lectures, their classes. They're sharpening devotional service for us. Like, okay, the practice of devotional service, like this is the essence, follow this. And so the guidance of the spiritual master is so important. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. That's the first one. Srila Rupa Goswami lists this first because it is the most important foundational practice. The spiritual master shows one how to execute all other practices of pure devotional service. Without accepting his shelter, one does not have effective access to any of the other practices. So people say, how do I accept a spiritual master? It is generally the case that the person who is you're associating with, who is guiding you, who is inspiring you, who you are hearing from, becomes your spiritual master, because they are the ones who are introducing you to spiritual life. And this is why it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon that the devotees, they tend to take from the spiritual master where they get most association, or the spiritual masters who visit most to a yatra or who spend time more. It doesn't have to be that way, because sometimes devotees are not inspired by that person. They have a choice. There's no zonal acharya system in ISKCON, right? It used to be, and that was a false system, and it was removed because the relationship is based on the heart. There has to be a heart-to-heart connection. However, because of this principle that the spiritual master introduces us to devotional service, it is not uncommon that the spiritual master who is teaching you is your spiritual master, because that is the function of the spiritual master, and so the disciple feels grateful and is naturally drawn. But ultimately, it's a matter of the heart, and someone may choose a spiritual master far away if they're inspired by that person. The quote from Srimad Bhagavatam 11.3.21 reveals exactly what it means to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. One must understand the futility of sense gratification, become frustrated with it, and abandon one's dreams and plans for happiness in material life. Then, to obtain positive relief from material suffering, one must seek a genuine transcendentalist and accept guidance from him. So accepting a spiritual master is not a rubber stamp. Okay, I have a guru, and this is a cool guru, and they're famous, and all my friends are, his disciples, so I accept this spiritual master. No, we should accept a spiritual master who we can hear from, who we are hearing and take guidance from. One must seek genuine transcendentalists to accept guidance from them. If we don't want to be trained, if we don't want to be corrected, if we don't want to be pushed forward in spiritual life, then no need to take a spiritual master. It is not a matter of fad, like Prabhupada says, that I have a guru. In India, you see this, people all the time. They go and they find a guru who gives them a stamp that you are a disciple. But there's no spiritual practice associated with it. There's no detachment, and there's no understanding of the futility of sense gratification. So there should be attachment to spiritual life and detachment from material life. And abandon one's dreams and plans for happiness in material life. This is a part of the process. The qualification of a spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusions of the scriptures by deliberation and arguments, and thus be able to convince others of these conclusions. He can control the 6 types of sense gratification. So 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. That's the second step, becoming initiated by the spiritual master. So now he expands on this one. After finding a bona fide spiritual master, item 1, one must accept him as a representative of Krishna and thereby develop unshakable faith in his words. The rite of initiation, also called Diksha, formally expresses this absolute faith. So it's like Prabhupada compares Diksha to marriage, right? It's a little unknown, but one has enough knowledge about the other person and enough desire that they're able to make that leap. They're able to serve and make that leap. And make have firm faith in the words of the spiritual master. And when we're new in spiritual life, then we don't have that faith. We don't have that knowledge that can I put my trust in this person 100%? So then the people who are more advanced, our faith develops by the assurance of those people who we trust, the people who we do know and who are more advanced, who might be cultivating our bhakti. They tell us that, oh, this person is awesome. This person we can actually have full faith in. And thus we are, thus our faith is, and the assurance, as in all other things in life, is oftentimes dependent on the people who we know and who we trust. Right? This is why, a doctor's son will often become a doctor, because their parents give them that assurance that, yeah, you'll be happy as a doctor and you can do it, and this is how you do it. A politician's son will become a politician. I could never go into politics. There's no clue, like, where do you turn left and right? Who do you talk to? How to do this? And it's a completely, but people who are born in such families, it's natural for them. And that's why we also find that in our movement, it's not something unnatural, that the person who has cultivated someone, they are naturally drawn to take initiation from the spiritual master the spiritual master of the person who has cultivated them, right? Why? Because they are giving them the faith that this person is tried and tested. They trust them, and they're saying, I've, been under the guidance of this person since the last 20 years, and they're sublime, they're wonderful. And so devotees are naturally very interested and enthusiastic to take shelter of the person who they take shelter of. So like this. To take shelter of the spiritual master, of the person who they've taken, guidance from. The third one, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. So then initiation, okay, the rite is done, marriage is done, everyone's married. Now the relationship begins. In the Vedic system, that's when it begins. So then we develop that relationship by obeying the orders of the spiritual master, following their instructions. These are 2 wonderful disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Vishnujan Maharaj and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who were exemplary disciples, who showed how they gave their life and soul to Prabhupada's mission, his movement, and had a huge impact because they were 100% dedicated to Srila Prabhupada's movement. After assimilating the spiritual master's instructions, item 2, the disciple should reciprocate by offering service. By taking initiation and instruction, item 2, the disciple learns that he is the eternal servant of Krishna. Item 3 instructs him to apply that knowledge by serving Krishna's representative. So this is we then need to apply. We learn, we take the guidance, but then the remaining part is up to us. Just like, I can't remember where, but I read some time back that the seed of bhakti, the inspiration for spiritual life, is given by the spiritual master. That's 25%. And I should say spiritual masters also, our, people who also give it to us in the beginning before we take initiation. Then 25% after that is given by shiksha gurus, but our spiritual master oftentimes cannot be there all the time. They're traveling, they're in a different part of the world. So our shiksha gurus, our other spiritual masters around us, they do the other 25%. That could be the Patpadarshika Guru, the spiritual master, introduces us to Krishna consciousness. It could be a senior devotees, etc. Then 25% further is inspired by the devotees around us, our peers, our equals, because they bump into us and they purify us and they say, hey, you're doing this wrong and you offended me like this. And we learn about bhakti through that process. And then the final 25% is what? The final 25% is our own spiritual practice, our own effort, how intensely we practice Krishna consciousness and we apply it over the course of our life. And that final 25% makes a big difference because a teacher has so many students, but the student that excels the most is the one who studies hard, who practices, who is eager to apply those instructions, and they make a lot of progress. So we find in like the Mahabharata, Dronacharya had so many disciples, so many students, but Arjuna was his best. Why? Because even at night he was practicing. He would wake up and practice shooting arrows all night. And then Drona said, you will be my best student. Because Arjuna had the best teacher. So he was very fortunate to have the best teacher. There's no shortage in the teacher. And not everyone had the best teacher. So he had that part. And now because he was so dedicated, Dronacharya could say, you will be the best archer in the world. The other students also had the best teacher, but they weren't as dedicated as Arjuna was. So, all of this other stuff is the easy part. Or whatever it is, it happens and we go through it. But whatever spiritual master, as long as they're bona fide, they're within our ISKCON movement and they're bona fide, they're tried and tested, approved by the other sadhus, then we will excel. Once we have that initiation, whoever it's by, but those disciples will excel, who will really apply Srila Prabhupada's instructions in their life and follow it very intensely with a lot of enthusiasm and daily, unshakable. So that is the thing. And how do we do that? Now here we come. Coming back to the same point we started with, that the Guru does not exist in a vacuum. Prabhupada himself never did anything that the Acharyas did not say, following in the footsteps of great Acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. So it's based upon our parampara system, as some of you had said. It connects us to the parampara. So what does that mean, connect us to the parampara? We're following the instructions of the Acharyas through the direction and guidance of the spiritual master who's living in front of us, who can translate those instructions in practice for us, who can clarify doubts and misunderstandings for us, and give us the instructions of the Acharyas. And we must also corroborate. This is why our society is Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. It's not just Guru. Three things: Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So the Gurus there, the Acharyas, and our contemporary devotees are all the Sadhus. And then the Shastras are the books. That's also the Acharyas, because the Acharyas are writing books. All three must match. And then we're on the right path. We're doing it well. And this is why Bhakti Shastri is so important, because if it were just the initiation, they wouldn't say, well, Bhakti Shastri is necessary for initiation. No, because once you get initiated and before initiation, you have to see, you have to understand and appreciate that the instructions of my spiritual master resonate with what Rupa Goswami is saying in the Nectar devotion. He is our Acharya, one of the greatest Acharyas, right? So we're Rupanugas. So we must see, is it resonating with Bhagavad Gita, with Nectar of Instruction, with Ishopanishad, the Upanishads, such authorities of Vedic knowledge. So this is, all three of them energize each other. One should carry out his devotional service in a manner that follows the example of the previous acharyas. Particularly here, we see the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. The instructions of a bona fide spiritual master must always follow the previous acharyas and authoritative scriptures. Anyone whose instructions do not follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas is not a bona fide spiritual master. So the acharya, the spiritual master gets their authority from the acharyas. Prabhupada here saying, one who does not follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas is not a bona fide spiritual master. And then here in this image, we see that verse from the Gita, imam vivasvate yogam, evam parampara praptam, imam rajarshayo vidu, sakalena mahata yoga nashta parantam. So it was given to Vivasvan, then Ikshvaku, then Manu, and all the kings understood it in this way. Imam Vivasvate Yogam, Proktavanam. That verse is kind of escaping me, the first one. But then he says, Evam Parampara Praptam. So it's in the Gita. Krishna himself is saying that the Parampara system is there. Following the teachings of Lord Buddha is not a bona fide way to practice pure devotional service, because Lord Buddha's teachings reject the Vedas and previous acharyas. And then key point here, even if one is the personality of Godhead himself, Lord Buddha, he is not a bona fide spiritual master if he does not follow the previous authorities. Right? How much there's this descending process, right? This acceptance of the previous acharyas. So that's why, people say that, well, Prabhupada said that he is the last guru, and after him, there's no other gurus. And so we can only take initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And that's the Ritvik philosophy. But let's say even that's true. I mean, it's not true. Prabhupada never said that. There's one statement where he says to his contemporary disciples in the contemporary setting that you initiate on our behalf, on my behalf. You initiate on my behalf, because Prabhupada got very ill. And so it is not uncommon that if a spiritual master may get ill, then his senior disciples may do the initiation ceremony, do all the functions of the initiation on their behalf, on the instruction and acceptance of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada was accepting the disciple, but he couldn't travel everywhere. So he was, asking his disciples, and also even if they were there physically, he couldn't, physically do the whole initiation ceremony. So he's saying, you do on my behalf. And that was during his presence. And they say, well, see, that was his instructions, that you were always to do only on Prabhupada's behalf, which means actually, because those devotees were Prabhupada's disciples. Prabhupada was on the planet at that time. So they said, even now, everyone's Prabhupada's disciple. What Prabhupada meant was for the present. And furthermore, even now, his disciples are obviously initiating on Prabhupada's behalf. And he was speaking to his disciples, because the spiritual master initiates on behalf of their spiritual master. but they are still the spiritual master, because otherwise, how can they instruct the disciple, and how can the disciple make spiritual progress? Just like they had a living spiritual master, their disciples also have the good fortune of having a living spiritual master. So some people say that, oh, Prabhupada said this, that he's the last spiritual master. So he didn't say this, like I explained. But even if he did, this is not what our previous acharyas have taught. So even if he did, that's not something that we can practice. Even Lord Buddha himself was the Supreme Lord. What to speak of, being an empowered servant of the Lord. This was the Lord himself. And because he was teaching something that was not based on the previous acharyas, we don't practice it. We don't practice this path of Shunyavad. It's not found in the Vedas. Similarly, the Ritvik system is not found in the Vedas. Do you ever find someone who's taking initiation from a spiritual master that's no longer there? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is taking initiation from Vyasadeva, or someone is taking initiation from Madhvacharya. The spiritual master has to prove it. That is the process. All the acharyas have done it this way. So we cannot uh, misinterpret like this. And then furthermore, the point is that there's hundreds and thousands of times where Prabhupada talks about the process of initiation, dozens of times where he says, all of my disciples will become spiritual masters. All of them should become spiritual masters. So many times where he requests his disciples to become gurus, travel all around the world, and take disciples after his departure. So then you have all of these statements of Prabhupada, and then you have all the previous acharyas, and they're all saying the same thing, which is that the disciplic succession will continue. And then you have one or two statements that may be interpreted in a certain way that could be confusing. But then we can't take those statements to be more important than the other statements because of what the previous acharyas have said. So very important point. And this is like, you will, in your Krishna consciousness and your preaching, have already or will encounter this Ritvik philosophy on many occasions. And so this is good that we talked about it, because this is how to respond to it. This is how to respond. This is, look, where is it in the parampara? And even Buddha was the Lord, he was teaching something. So even Prabhupada taught it. But how can we follow it? And then we should also point out that his words are resonating with all the previous acharyas 99% of the time. And that 1% of the time, it's just ambiguous. It's not even that they're not resonating. So we have to look at the 99%. So Rupa Goswami quotes this verse, which serves as kind of a foundation of this chapter. Shruti Smriti Puranardi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantikir Harer Bhaktir Utpatayeva Kalpate. Shri Rupa Goswami quotes the Brahma Yamala, unless one refers to Shastra, Shruti, Smriti, and Puranadi, one's spiritual activity simply disturbs society. This is, unless we are actually doing our spiritual life according to the scriptures, Shruti, Smriti, and Purana, these are the three types of scriptures. Shruti means revealed knowledge like the Upanishads. That's why we have Isha Upanishad. And also Gita comes in the area of Shruti because it's spoken by Krishna. Smritis are the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and Puranas, that's Bhagavatam. Unless one follows these three, one's spiritual activity simply disturbs society. Everyone has to follow scriptures. Number 5, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. So we must actively ask questions. It's our duty. It's not like, okay, I'm very humble, so I sit in the back and I just accept. But if you just accept, then when the challenges come, you won't be able to practice if you have not understood, if it hasn't gone deep in your heart. So Prabhupada used to sometimes chastise his disciples if they didn't ask questions. Asking questions is part of the spiritual process of Krishna consciousness. Number 6, being prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we were like, okay, we can do these 64 items of devotional service. But now number 6, being ready to give up anything material for the satisfaction of Krishna. Can I give up my house? Can I give up my car? Can I give up my job? There's one disciple of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and I don't want to take their name, but it's Tamal Krishna Maharaj. When a disciple is very sincere and there's a very deep relationship, he would train them very nicely, and so one time this disciple was telling that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in Mayapur, and he needed someone to run the Dallas temple, and there's one disciple that he felt was qualified at that time, very qualified to do so. And so he calls him and he says, I want you to come to Mayapur tomorrow. He's like, Maharaj, I have a job, I have this, I have that, I cannot just come. He says, you must come to Mayapur right now. And so he drops everything and flies from the USA all the way to Mayapur, meets Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj tells him that I want you to give up your job and become the temple president of the Dallas temple. And if you don't do this, you're not my disciple. So, the spiritual master, we can't get scared, because this disciple was also very spiritually evolved. And then he tells Maharaj, I have a family, I have a job, I finally got stability. And now you're telling me to become a full-time devotee, and is anyone going to pay me a salary? He says, obviously in ISKCON, there's no salary at that time. People were struggling, just to cover the rent. But he did it, and he made that leap, and he became a pure devotee, his disciple. So this is a principle of devotional life, which we can aspire for. It doesn't happen overnight. And giving up material things, as we read in the Gita and other things, is not necessarily the path of spiritual life. So Krishna may not be happy if we prematurely give up our family or job, because he wants us to do those things. That's part of our varnashram dharma. It's part of our duty and service to Krishna at that time. But those things are still, if the instruction comes to give up something material, we must be willing to. Like there's this I'll move forward then, not take too much time, but there's very, very sweet pastime that Gauranga Prabhu tells. He says that how one time a devotee went to Srila Prabhupada. So it's kind of similar to this Tamal Krishna Maharaj story. So he, to find a qualified person to lead a project is not easy, right? So he had a family, everything nice, and he was a very nice devotee, and he wasn't after, position, power, fame. And this is why he was doing his devotional services very nicely, but he didn't want to take the role of being a temple president. And precisely because of that reason, because he didn't want position, fame, and honor, devotees liked him and they wanted him to be president, and Prabhupada also. So he had some inkling, some feeling that Prabhupada, when he visited the next time, Prabhupada may ask him to be a temple president. So he had discussed with his wife and family and had written down all the arguments why he should not be temple president. So he was fully prepared before Srila Prabhupada came. And then Prabhupada came, and then of course he was called by Prabhupada to come and meet him. So he takes up his notes and he goes, really thinking, Prabhupada will say this, and I will tell him this, and genuinely, I don't want to be president. These are the reasons why. He has a whole thing rehearsed. So he goes and meets Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada sits, he's sitting there, and he sits in front of him. Srila Prabhupada says, so, how are you? He says, yes, I'm fine. He says, so, I have one instruction for you. He says, what is that instruction? Srila Prabhupada says, I want you to take sannyas. Now, he had prepared his notes very nicely, but he hadn't prepared for this. He said, I want you to take sannyas immediately. The man is like, I just have a family. The devotee is saying, I have small children, a wife, Prabhupada. I'm too attached. There's no way I can take sannyas. There's no, I want you to give up your family and take sannyas. Serve the Lord with full dedication. And the devotees tells Srila Prabhupada, I can't do this. I absolutely cannot do this. I'm willing to do anything that you say, but I just can't take sannyas. Please don't tell me to do this instruction. You're my spiritual. Please don't say that. So Prabhupada said, oh, really? Anything else other than this you're willing to? He said, yes. He says, okay, be temple president. And Prabhupada won the argument. And so he had saved all of his reasons not to become temple president, but Prabhupada made him temple president out of his own choice. He said, I'm willing to do anything else, but do that. So this is how expert the spiritual master is. And this is why we can never, I experienced this in my own life, we can never win an argument with the spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master, advanced spiritual master, because they're connected with our super soul. So it's like they already are one step ahead of us. They already know the arguments that are coming. It's like when you're playing chess, if you know the moves of the other person, then there's no way you can win them, because they know already your moves. They know which move you're going to take. So Prabhupada was like that, so perfect. Someone else, he would have came and said, please be temple president. They're very happy. Yes, I'll be temple president, Srila Prabhupada. But this disciple, he knew how to make them give up their material attachment of not being a leader, which was a lot of work, by giving them and saying, oh, you think that's surrender? Well, this is surrender. Okay, you can't do this, then do at least that. So perfect, right? So nice. 7, residing in a sacred place of pilgrimage like Dwarka or Vrindavan. 8, accepting only what is necessary, or dealing the material world only as far as necessary. Right? So we come back to this, residing in a place of pilgrimage like Vrindavan and Dwarka. Very detailed, so that's why we're not discussing it right now. But it's very conducive to be in a spiritual atmosphere. And our pilgrimage spots today are Prabhupada's temples, because not all of us can go to Dwarka or Vrindavan, but we can take shelter, take association, or even reside in the temple of Krishna, which is non-different than the Dham. Of course, the Dham has very special potency, so still, even if we reside in the temple, Prabhupada told all of us to visit places of pilgrimage once a year. Number 8, accepting only what is necessary, or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. Such a nice instruction, because we can't give up the material world completely. We have to do our job and all these family, all these things, but we accept only what is necessary. We don't overexpand our material life. We were just hearing the pastime of Shakatasura from His Holiness Romapad Swami Maharaj, and Shakatasura represents the anartha of overloaded with bad material habits or material things. And Krishna's killing that demon, kicking the cart away, which was the cart demon. He had taken the form of a cart, was removing that burden that we have, accepting too much. We should accept only that which is necessary. In terms of spiritual practices, if one makes vows that are above his ability, he is likely to break them, and one become implicated in the sin of breaking his word. So even in spiritual life, we can do more than what we can do, and that then becomes a problem. And 2, one considers oneself a failure, which may discourage him from devotional service altogether. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada advises us to make realistic vows and not unnecessarily accept spiritual practices beyond our current level of realization. Like Prabhupada gave us a very nice morning program. You rise early in the morning, Mangal Arati, all these things. Now, sometimes devotees try to do even more amazing things, like waking up at 2 in the morning, chanting all the rounds before Mangal Arati, which actually 3 times in his books, Prabhupada mentions that chanting before Mangalarti is very nice. But sometimes devotees try to do those things or chant 32 rounds a day. But then, they get less sleep, and then they can't function in the day. And then after some time, they give up that practice. So if someone is in the renounced order of life or is a full-time brahmachari in a temple, they may be able to do that. But for us, making the realistic effort of doing Prabhupada's program of waking up 4 in the morning and, or 5 in the morning and doing Mangalartik is maybe the right thing to do. And doing more than that might be spiritual practices beyond our current level of realization, because we don't have the realization of being able to sleep 4 hours a day. If you can sleep 4 hours a day, no problem, right? But you're not able to, and you have a family and you have to stay up late at night, not too late, but practically you have to stay up, until 10 o'clock often. So then you need 6 hours of sleep. So that's like 4 and a half, 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. 2 a.m. is 4 hours, and you can't do it. So we must do spiritual practices that are on our current level of realization. At the same time, we should not take that to become lax. That, well, my current level of realization is that, well, I'm just a vegetarian. I eat out. I eat onions and garlic, even though I took vows not to do so. That's not the case. We must rigidly follow the rules and regulations of devotional life. But the additional vows we should not take. But generally, when I take a vow, I take the vow that, during Kartik, I will try to do this every day for the full month. So in this way, I'm making the vow of the intention, that the intention is that I will try every single day to do this. And generally, if it's a reasonable vow, I'm able to do it. But if I break it, then it's not breaking my word, or it's not too much pressure. If, let's say, unexpectedly life changes, let's say 20 days later something happens which is completely unexpected, and you can't fulfill that vow. So then what happens? You have to break it. So one way to make a vow and at the same time keep your word is to say, I will try to do it, because then every day you'll try to do it. And if your life changes, you'll still try to do it. But if it changes extremely and you're unable to do it, there's no major reaction. 9, observing the fasting day on Ekadashi. Very important, right? Lord Chaitanya asked his mother that always follow Ekadashi. Never miss Ekadashi. It's one of the principal items of devotional life. And, in our modern ISKCON, sometimes people are undermining the importance of Ekadashi. I was so inspired by His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj that even when he was in the ICU, he remembered. His disciples didn't remind him. He remembered. He said, today's Ekadashi. I'm going to follow Ekadashi. I mean, imagine that absorption and dedication to Krishna. Unbelievable. Like when you're sick, the last thing that comes to your mind is Ekadashi. And he's in the ICU and he's thinking, today's Ekadashi. I'm not going to eat grains. He didn't take certain medicines that were not essential. He took the essential medicines. Those don't break Ekadashi. My Guru Maharaj said that medicine doesn't break Ekadashi. So he took his essential medicine, but then he didn't take anything else. 10, worshipping sacred trees like Tulsi. The glories of worshipping Tulsi are unlimited. And those who worship Tulsi carefully, they get pure love for Krishna. Chanting the holy name and worshipping Tulsi go hand in hand, because Tulsi is silent association for the devotee. So when we're chanting in the association of Tulsi, we're chanting in the association of a pure devotee of the Lord. Imagine if we were chanting in the association of Haridas Thakur, like the prostitute, wouldn't we become a pure devotee? It's the same thing with Tulsi. When we chant in her association, we're chanting in the association of a pure devotee. And we're more likely to feel the effect of chanting in our heart. Offenses to the Vaishnavas is the foremost impediment in devotional service. One can positively guard against this offense by developing an attitude of firm respect towards any living entity connected to Krishna's service. These entities include banyan trees, tulsi, brahmanas, and cows. So in our spiritual life, only for some time can we be artificial, right? Eventually, if something is wrong, if something is bad, we have to speak up. And sometimes even not speaking up is an offense. So, but then how do we do all of it? How do we not offend the devotees, also speak up, and also, be practical and even disagree with devotees and say that they're wrong at times when we need to? The key thing is respect. If we do it respectfully, then we can say whatever we need to say, and it won't be an offense. Right? Like when we're dealing with someone senior, we put it as a question. And Prabhupada once said that when he was dealing with his senior godbrothers, he was disturbed that they were not following Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj's instructions. And so he spoke strongly. And he said, is this what our spiritual master had told us? Is this what his desire was? That, we just do our mutts and we sit in India and we have our own mutt and our own this and that, and we don't preach. And the God brothers heard, and they appreciated what Prabhupada said, and some disciples of Srila Prabhupada were with him. And then afterwards, Prabhupada told them, he said that I put it as a question, and this is why it was not an offense. Because Prabhupada, of course, spiritually was the most senior of everyone, but in terms of age and in terms of relationship, many of these godbrothers were older sannyasis who had gotten sannyas long time before he did. And so Prabhupada said, I put it as a question. I put it as a question. And a respectful question, right? He put it respectfully. Is this what our spiritual master asked us to do? Was this his desire? 11, one should rigidly give up the company of non-devotees. So give up the company of non-devotees. Lord Chaitanya says, Asat Sangatyagi Vaishnavachar. A Vaishnava, he says, is one who gives up the company of non-devotees. Very interesting. He doesn't say a Vaishnava is someone who accepts the association of devotees. Even more important, he says, give up the association of non-devotees. Because if you give up the association of non-devotees, you will take shelter of devotees. But if you take shelter of devotees, but you're still keeping association with non-devotees, it won't fully hit the heart. It won't reach the heart. This is a fact. And that's why we see in our movement also, among many devotees, many of whom who are young and attending, school or college, they have such wonderful association, right? They're meeting with sannyasis and gurus on a weekly basis, who are visiting their temples or their communities. Yet sometimes they're fading away for some time. Why? Because though they have good association, they are not able to give up their bad association, the association that they get in high school and all the peer pressure there, the movies, the videos, the drugs, at college also, living in the dorm, right? So we may have great association. I experienced this in my own life. But then if we live in the dorm, we're surrounded by non-devotees, then eventually we will crack. And so we will become like them. It is, especially at that age, is impossible literally to avoid that. So the key thing was for me was to live with devotees while studying at the university, and wherever I could do that, that was the university of my choice. And my good fortune was that Oxford University had a very nice house with devotees, and I got into there, and that was the deciding factor, that okay, there's a nice house with devotees, I can live there. Because especially two things, and Rupa Goswami mentioned this, the people we eat with, that's association. If we're eating with the people that we eat with, we get their consciousness. That's where really the heart-to-heart talk takes place. That's why most business decisions are not made in the office. They're made on the dining table. And secondly is the people that we reveal our heart to, right? Our innermost kind of challenges, desires. And those are generally the people we live with. So both things are covered if we try to live in the company of devotees always. So what are non-devotees? Prabhupada mentions 3 categories of non-devotees. 1, the atheists, who try to satisfy selfish desires by their own endeavors. 2, mundane religionists, try to satisfy selfish desires by God's blessings. And 3, the impersonalists, who try to satisfy selfish desires by obtaining liberation. So these are the 3 types of non-devotees. We must avoid all 3 of them. So the impersonalists, particularly Lord Chaitanya says, if we hear their bhashya, sarvanash, everything is lost, right? The mundane religionists are oftentimes devotees who are not devotees who are materially interested, and sometimes that association is worse than even the non-devotees, because we think I can be a devotee and still watch horror movies, and that's not right. So their association will dilute our spiritual practice. And the first one is the atheists, right? Obviously the non-devotees. 12, one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. Very interesting. This is a pure devotee, Rupa Goswami, who's saying it. So is he saying we should not preach? Most people are not desirous. No, he's saying we shouldn't instruct them, but we should engage them in devotional service. The verse in the Gita is there, right? That the intelligent devotee does not disturb the minds of the materialists, but rather he engages them in devotional service through the process. So we give them prasadam. We invite them to chant the holy name. We give them books. Sometimes they want a nice book. They're buying it. It's their choice, and they're accepting it. But we don't preach to them because they're not willing to accept, and then they argue, and then they become more averse, right? When you have an argument with someone, they often become more averse. One should not be very enthusiastic about constructing costly temples. Wow. So sometimes devotees may think, Swami Narayans have all these temples. Why ISKCON we don't have? Because our focus is not just in constructing temples. Our focus is in engaging ourselves and others in devotional service. And if the temple is too costly, the problem is that all day we will think, how do I get the money to construct the temple? And then secondly, how do I get the money to maintain the temple? And costly is a relative term. So in central Delhi, 100 crore temple may not be costly because you have tens of thousands of millionaires and you have millions of people and you have 100,000 people coming every day to the temple. So this is literally the bare minimum you can supply. Like in the Radha Parthasarathi temple, the central temple of ISKCON there, and my Guru Maharaj Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, that was his first contribution, major one, to Prabhupada's movement, because Prabhupada told him specifically to build a temple there, and a very grand temple. Prabhupada told him to build a very grand temple. So you think, oh, well, Rupa Goswami said something different. No, but Prabhupada knew. And Guru Maharaj was saying at one point, when some years back when I was there, he was saying that every day we get 30 school buses. Every day, 30, right? 30 school buses. And in India, you know how many people come in a bus, probably 100 children in every school bus. So 30 times 100, right? What's that? 3,000. 3,000 kids were coming every day during the day just to go and have a tour of the temple, the museum, This was like, all the schools signed up because they needed nice places to go to, and it was one of the most beautiful places in Delhi, this temple. So 30 school buses were coming. On Janmashtami, they would get, about 100,000 people every day, and it was like a 5-day festival. On a daily basis, they were getting more than 20,000 visitors daily. So that's not children, that's just families, adults, all these things. So when you have such crowds coming, you need a big space. But even that temple was not, like every pillar is intricately designed and 100 pillars there. It was a very functional temple, like open spaces, big halls, so people could come, and a nice museum where all these people are coming. Like you have 10,000 people, how can even 100 devotees preach to them? Like you cannot, right? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had given the process, and then Prabhupada repeated that, and then His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj applied that in Delhi, where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj wanted museums, where by going through the museum, you get the whole philosophy. So was an automated show. Every room had this recording, a beautiful Bhagavad Gita presentation. It's genius. Like the whole plan is like, how could they figure this out? So amazing. So all these 10,000 people, they're like, the main attraction there is this animatronic museum that has technology from America. So they would take tickets. It would also help fund the temple and go through the museum, and everyone would hear the philosophy, like a full, 1 hour lecture on the Bhagavad Gita, while watching dioramas, so fully, absorbing, and they would have the experience of Krishna consciousness. And that was one level. That was the Gita, museum. Then the second level was the Ramayana. They had the whole a very special. So they would go through the Gita, then they would see the entire Ramayana, and then the third one was Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And they would get the introduction about Lord Chaitanya and all these things. And they get, to this day, you can go there to Delhi and go through all 3 floors and go through that museum. So our goal is not temples, because our goal is changing people's hearts. And so Prabhupada says, if we get a very costly temple, then our mind will just be in collecting money. And so according to our circumstance, we have to get something that's practical. Small places, small temple. And Prabhupada, in one lecture, he directly refers to this. In that lecture, he says, so I will build a temple. Prabhupada is speaking how he applies this. He says, I will build a temple, a very nice temple for Krishna. But he says, but I will not, and this was the early days. He said, I will not build $1 million temple, because then all day we will think how we will get that $1 million, rather than thinking how to preach and all these things. So building temple is very important. All the Goswamis did that. Rupa Goswami established so many temples, but according to our capacity. One should not try to read too many books, nor should one develop the idea of earning his livelihood by lecturing on or professionally reciting Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. So even in ISKCON, we can become professional readers and speakers, where our whole focus becomes how fancy of a lecture can I give, and the focus moves from being a servant and pleasing Krishna and Guru, getting pure devotional service to Krishna. It moves from there to becoming a great spokesperson. And that mindset is easy to slip into. So we must read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully. He's not saying don't read. What he's saying is don't try to, artificially become a big speaker and scholar at the expense of being a servant. If we become a speaker and scholar for Krishna, and we're fully dedicated to being a servant like the Goswamis, then that's okay, but not simply to show off our learning. Some of the greatest devotees of Lord Chaitanya were illiterate people. And again, we don't have time, so I can't go in detail, and give examples. But there's one devotee who Lord Chaitanya said was a pure devotee who was reading the Gita upside down, because he couldn't read. But he was a pure devotee because he was crying as he was seeing Krishna's picture. And he was saying, how is it that Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna? The activities themselves are not forbidden. For even the author, Srila Rupa Goswami, had disciples constructed fancy temples, and read and wrote many books. Rather, the motives of pride and prestige linked with these activities must be rejected. 15. One should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. So, very nice point, huh? That spiritual life is also connected with our etiquette, and and not following the etiquette will actually affect our spiritual life. Because he puts it in the 64 items of bhakti. So, okay, this might be a nice preaching point that, a devotee should not be neglectful of ordinary dealings. But no, he's saying that this is a spiritual principle, one of the limbs of bhakti, and it's coming in the first 20. Why? Why? Because being neglectful in our ordinary dealings will affect our bhakti, will damage it. Because if we're neglectful in our ordinary dealings, our mind will become agitated because we'll offend people or things will go wrong, and then when we're chanting, we will be agitated. So we must, and this is also something. This is why Prabhupada emphasized on Vaishnav etiquette. Right? We have a seminar coming up on January 17th in Naperville, a 3-day seminar on Vaishnav etiquette, and one of the topics we discuss is ethics. This is why ethics is important, because dharma pleases the Lord. Doing proper dealings with people, not just even devotees, ordinary dealings with everyone, pleases the Lord. Ordinary dealings especially refers to financial transactions, which have the peculiar ability to evoke a mood of cheating and miserliness that weakens the selfless foundation of sadhana bhakti. Right? Devotee is very simple in his dealings, very clear and straightforward, and this is why they are very peaceful and they can do practice nicely. Not just that, but this is also how they please the Lord. Krishna is displeased when we are duplicious. 16. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation, or in loss or jubilation in gain. So one should not be under the spell of lamentation or jubilation. One of the key messages of Gita, happiness and distress, be steady in both. If you're not steady, your bhakti will also waver. Like your emotions waver, your bhakti will waver. So be steady in your emotions. Be steady in your practice of bhakti. One who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So, as I mentioned, one of the key messages of Gita, and that becomes a way of being dear to the Lord. One should not disrespect the demigods. So we don't worship the demigods, yet we don't disrespect them. Don't criticize Shiva, Brahma, Indra. Bhagavatam can do that. Bhagavatam sometimes criticizes them. Bhagavatam says they have ghastly faces, or they make fun of them, of like Indra and Shiva. But we deal with them with great respect because they're exalted devotees of the Lord, and they're supplying the necessities to us for the service of Krishna. So who are we to disrespect them? And this also relates with the general mode of behavior of a devotee, that the devotee doesn't disrespect government leaders, doesn't disrespect people of position and authority like policemen and all these things, because they're like demigods. They're powerful people in positions that, anyone who has power is carrying the potency of the Lord to some degree. And that position has been due to their pious activity. They've gained that. And we have to respect them. We don't have to agree with them. We don't agree with the demigods' activities all the time. We don't have to follow everything that they say, but we don't disrespect them. One should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. So when we give trouble to any living entity, we harass someone, it affects our bhakti. We can't trick Krishna. It might be a family member, it might be a pet, it might be anyone, but we must not give trouble to others. We must deal with them with affection. And that is the end of chapter 7. So because we did 2 chapters, we went a little longer. It's above time, over time. Please forgive me. But if you like, we can have questions and answers for a few minutes, and then after that we'll stop. It's quite self-explanatory, these sections, because they're just limbs of devotional service. So Charu Radhanani Mataji?
Uh, yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, everyone. Prabhuji, I have 2 questions. The first one, I need clarity on the atheist, mundane,
Hmm.
the third category.
Hmm.
And second question is, we should, we should not be in the company of non-devotees. But if I agree that we should not accept the qualities of non-devotees, but
Ah.
if we will not be in, or we will not let them come in our association, which will not happen if we will not associate with them, then how will non-devotee will become a devotee? Because if I take my example, I was a non-devotee,
Hmm.
and so when I got connected to one of my friend, she was a big devotee, and she used to come to our place in our gatherings and parties, but she never used to have any prasadam because we never used to offer it. But that's how we started observing, and we started following her. We went to her house, and in the home lectures,
Hmm.
and that's how it started. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, yes. So that's how it begins for everyone, right? But see, what I was speaking about, and what here Rupa Goswami is saying, is that if we see, these other devotees were giving their association to you, but if we accept their association, meaning that, so I was giving the example of being a student, right? So if I am a student and every day I'm going and eating at the at the canteen, the student place where all the students eat, then eventually I'll get their consciousness. Like as in particularly eating their food, right? Sharing their non-offered food is going to affect my consciousness. That's accepting that association. That's accepting the association of non-devotees. On the other hand, if I'm living in my own place, I'm eating Krishna Prasad, but then when I meet them at the college, I introduce them to Bhagavad Gita. We have a once a week program. We had it at our student house there. On Friday nights, we would do a once a week program. And I invite them and I say, hey, come on over. We have a wonderful program going on here. Then, then I'm still associating with them, but I'm giving association. So all devotees, all householders particularly, should open up their homes and invite people to come, because when non-devotees will come and associate with devotees, like you're saying, that's how their bhakti will begin. But we can't, accept their lifestyle. If I was living in the dorm, let's say, then next to me, next door, there's a boy and girl, they're sleeping together, the door over, someone's taking some drugs. How strong are we? Maya Devi is more powerful than us. We are just a jiva. Eventually, if we don't have the right association, and if we don't give up that association, we will be like them. So making devotees, giving them association, doesn't mean that we live in their midst. It means that we live in our protected environment. And then we invite them. We share Krishna consciousness with them. Does that clarify, or is it
yes,
still?
Prabhuji.
Now, of course, I was giving an extreme example, but like at work, right? We have to associate with them. We have to talk with them. Otherwise, how can you develop relationships there? But still, we like there's a fine line, like like we may accompany them for a for a work lunch, but then we order salad. We don't do that. And then secondly, we accompany them on important meetings, but then I be as social as everyone else. Like I'm not going out, some faculty every day they go for lunch together and they just walk over to the student, and faculty area, I'm forgetting the name of that place. I'm calling it a canteen, but it's a food court. And I could do that, and it would probably improve my rapport with the fellow faculty. But doing it on a daily basis is too much, I feel. Like it's not that's associating non-devotees. But on special events, if the dean has invited, the chair has invited, I go because that's part of making ordinary dealings. And there even we order salad. I have a nice salad, and in today's society, it's very respectable and cool to have a salad, right? So people think, oh, this person's really health conscious, and like next time I'm going to order a salad. They actually say this. Next time I'm going to get the salad. So we give association. We find ways. We think of ways in which we can use our valuable time not in just socializing, but actually making a contribution.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And just a little explanation on mundane. Actually, I got confused between
So mundane in terms
atheist
of
and mundane.
what we said,
I got confused between atheist.
ethicist and the mundane.
Yeah.
So I remember the three categories of non-devotees. One was the atheist, one was the mundane religionists, and the third was the impersonalists. Is that what you're referring to? Or is it something else?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, so the atheist, I see, not the ethicist, the atheist. Okay, I got it. So the atheist is someone who says there's no God. They're like, I don't know, they're just they stand, with their hood open, eating hamburgers, and watching football sometimes. It's not everyone who watches football is an atheist, but just give you an example. So that's like pure materialism. Then you have people who come to the temple and they come and they do their arti, they do a sponsorship, but they're the least interested in practicing Krishna consciousness. In fact, if you become too much of a devotee, they get a little nervous, like, why is this guy being such a devotee? Like they like bhajans, but if you chant Hare Krishna, they look like you, like, who are you? Because their whole thing is that religion, they're pious, but religion is just social life for them. It's like be Krishna light. You find this among all different types of devotees in the East, in the West, and the core practice of bhakti is missing. The surrender, the dedication to the process is missing. That's mundane religionists. So that's the difference. One is completely rejecting God. The other one is accepting God, but it's easy to fall in their groove of being spiritual, but not making much spiritual progress, not actually doing the limbs of devotional service, beginning with taking shelter of a spiritual master. So for association, we give association to such devotees. We help them, but for association, we don't associate with them so much because they may confuse us. They may make spiritual life seem cheap. Sahajas is another category of mundane religionists. They're all about kirtan, all about, rasika things, but, they're still going to go and, smoke a cigarette. Or maybe more subtle, they're still going to go and watch movies at night, though they're following the four regulated principles, but they still watch movies every night. So that may be called mundane religion.
Understood.
Mundane. Yeah.
Understood, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Nice questions. Yashoda Vatsala Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. Thank you so much for this wonderful session and a lot of learning today.
Thank you.
Yeah, Prabhuji. So related to mundane, like I have also some follow-up question based on Mataji's question was if someone is showing like big tilak and everything, and following like no onion, no garlic, and all those things, but still does a lot of things that are not good for a
Yes.
devotee.
Mm.
How to deal with such people, and when they are closely associated with you for some reason,
Mm.
maybe
Yes.
professional reason.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we recognize their platform, and we gradually and patiently try to influence them, but not be influenced by them, right? So I can give you an example of children, and then it becomes very obvious. Like you have you have, let's say again, just completely fictitious example. Let's say you have your children, and you're telling your children, don't play video games, don't play Nintendo. And then your devotee child goes to another home where there's a devotee children, and those devotee children are playing Nintendo. So your child comes back and says, look, they're devotees and they're playing Nintendo. And so I can also be a devotee and play Nintendo. Yes, of course, you can be a devotee and play video games, and you're still a devotee. Krishna is very kind. But uh, because they're a child, they don't understand that, okay, there's different degrees of level and advancement in devotional life, right? And so we have to explain to them, well, they're devotees, yet they're devotees with some material desires, and those material desires are a bit more than where we want to be. We want to not do those things, and so that's not the best association. But if you need to associate with them, don't start thinking like them. Try to influence them to stop playing video games and instead, do kirtan with you, or do, sports with you, whatever. So the same thing with adults. We may be obliged to associate with devotees who have certain habits that are not in line with Krishna consciousness, but then we try to, again, influence them. So we just have to be very careful. Oh, he's a devotee, but we just can't accept everything just because they're devotees. We will still try to keep our standard. Or we may be that devotee who's still attached to these things, and other devotees are helping us. Or we may learn from other devotees to be more spiritual and less mundane in our practice. Right? So it may go both ways. And people at work, same thing. Like you were stuck with them, people in relationships, we're with them, and they have their different level. But Rupa Goswami is helping us recognize things as they are. Okay, that is not the practice of bhakti. Mundane religiosity is not what we're after. So, and with that knowledge, we can influence them.
Very well. Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. On the last point is one slide that I have taken from your presentation today, which is for the meeting etiquettes. I think that will be going everywhere, even in professional world. This will go well. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, it's very relevant for all of us. Yes, thank you. Haripriya, please give us the final nectar summary.
Just a minute, she's coming.
Okay.
So yes, so I had some points
Yes.
that from chapter 6, some points. So we can see that chapter 6 has a 64 items of devotional service, and chapter 7 to chapter 12 they have 64 items explained, like in groups. So today we read chapter 7, and it has like the items 1 to 18 explained. And these three things, and actually the first three things are the most important, and they're accepting a spiritual master, taking initiation, and serving the spiritual master with awe and reverence. And then these three things are stated in the beginning because they began our spiritual life. And my next point is that we should be eager to take initiation. And then my next point is that the most important items are worshipping the deity, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating among devotees, Sankirtan, and living in Mathura. And and then my points from chapter 7 are that Guru is the most important. And my next point is accepting a spiritual master. And then we can see that Rupa Goswami list the first list this first because it is the most important foundational practice. And one should not choose a spiritual master for rubber-like reasons. One should first see if the Guru's instructions match the Shastra's conclusion. And then initiation means initiation or diksha should happen only if one has firm faith on the spiritual master and then obeying the order of the spiritual master. And then we can see that 25% that like 25% um, the devotional practice we get from the spiritual master's blessings, and then 25 from the Siksha Guru's blessings, and then 25% of the devotee's blessing, and 25% of our own spiritual practice. And then my next point is that following in the footsteps of great acharyas under the direction of spiritual master. The spiritual master's instructions should follow the previous acharya's instructions, and we can't follow Buddha even though he was the Lord himself. Like he did not follow the Vedas and previous acharyas. And then we can have and we can and then my next point is that deciding in a sacred place. If it's not that possible, then in Srila Prabhupada's mandirs. And then my next point is that accepting and dealing with anyone as far as necessary possible. Like only like how much it's necessary we should do it. And then my next point is that one should only make vows that are possible for oneself because he will get if he don't follow them he will get sin and he will also be he will also not be happy with one's himself. And then we can see that one should also follow Ekadashi. And then my next point is that one should also worship Tulsi. So offense to the Vaishnavas very much sinful. But the Vaishnavas include cows, brahmanas, and devotees, Tulsi, and the banyan tree. But if you put your offensive words in a question, like how Pupa did when he asked his god brothers that 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 this is what our guru said, so then it would not be considered aparad. And then my next point is that free from association of non-devotees. So people will eat with so people will we eat with matters very much like as we eat with people that then we get their association also. And also we should we should we should distribute our association themselves instead of taking their association on ourselves. And then atheists or mundane religionists and impersonalists are people who are considered non-devotees. And then my next point is that one should not instruct people who are not interested in bhakti, and one should not be very enthusiastic about costly temples. So you gave the Swami Narayan temples example if we think that they build so costly temples, but in our ISKCON we don't build that much costly temples. It because it's a item out of the 64 items, and then one should not read too many books. And then my next one is that one should not be neglectful
That's
to.
the one you can tell your mother that I don't have to read too many books. Rupa Goswami said that. Just joking.
And then and then my next point is that one should not disrespect demigods, and at last one should not give unnecessary trouble to any. And also, Prabhu, I did not get the 16th one. You're muted.
Just check and see what's the 16th one.
Yeah.
16 is one should not be under the spell of lamentation or jubilation. So happiness and distress, getting too excited or too sad due to material loss and gain. So that was the Gita instruction. That one. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Haripriya. Always so nice. And today was a very long session. We had 2 chapters. Bimal Bhakti Mataji, we'll just end with you very quickly.
Sorry, sir. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Actually, this question, like you explain everything and then Hari Priya
Hmm.
does the summary. So my
Hmm.
question is to Hari Priya today.
Very nice.
The question is that do you write it at the time of all these, like during the lecture? How do you write these things all in details? Like that is a struggling part for me.
Just what I do is that like sometimes Prabhu he stops like on he stops on like shlokas or like
Mhm.
sometimes in the middle. So that time
Mm.
I take a screenshot of it and I write it like as quickly as possible. And then also something like also remember in my mind like I just write like one word and then I remember them in some.
Oh, very nice tip. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhuji. Haribol.
She could
Haribol.
teach my college students. She's taking notes, right? Getting the
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is devotee training, Krishna conscious training that devotees get. Their reading level when they read Prabhupada's books is more than college students,
Mm.
and their comprehension is more than college students because the
I
Shastras make us so spiritually sharp.
So, Prabhuji, the another question was that you mentioned about the etiquette seminar
Mhm.
on the
Yes,
devotees
yes,
etiquette. So,
yes.
will it be available on online or is it only in person?
That's a good question, actually. Will we be zooming it or not? I'll ask. I'll share the link on. There's an article on it on ISKCON News, and
Okay.
kind of to inform devotees. I'll share that link on the group, and then there's one Mataji there to contact. Her phone number is there. You could ask her. She would know whether or not it will be online or on Zoom also, or it's only in person. I know afterwards it'll be available because they record everything. And the
Okay.
main speaker is Holiness Rompa Swami Maharaj, and then Radha Krishna Prabhu, and I'm giving a session and like that. So we have a few very nice sessions, and Rompa Maharaj's always things are recorded and put online. So
Mhm.
they generally do the whole seminar. Like when there's a seminar, then they do all the sessions. So I don't know if it's live or not available, but definitely it'll be available in the form of recordings. But it might be available live also. I'll find out.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So meet next week and I'll post the homework.
Prabhu, can I ask one question?
Yes.
So, Prabhu, my question is not for the class. My question is like for the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhu, like one family they got in India, but other family they
Ah,
didn't.
okay. So uh
They asked for 2 set. This is Mohit Mankad. The name is that person's name.
okay. Sorry, 1 second here. Let me just view so I can see. Okay. So they were supposed to get 2 sets, but they only got 1 set.
No, Prabhu. They didn't get any, Prabhu. But
Okay.
other family, 2
Other
families,
family got it.
the other
Okay.
family got. I got their
Okay.
message.
Yeah, so please send me that family's address again, and I'll send it to NIFTA again and ask them to do it.
Sure,
Please,
sure.
please do
Thank you.
that today itself because another person messaged me. So I'll send both of them because these are kind of the leftover sets. They messaged me, we sent out everything, but then they missed a few. Like one other person said, this one didn't get out. So I'll send both of these. Please send it to me. Yes, and we'll take it.
Maybe Prabhu, this is an ashram. Like she's Prabhu's mother. She's
Oh,
living in a old age home or something, some ashram.
okay. So we'll still try. We'll
Sure,
discuss it offline. Yes, Mataji.
sure.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Prabhu. Thank you for the
Thank
nice.
you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat
Hare
pranam.
Krishna. Thank you so
Hare
much,
Krishna
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji,
Dhanavad
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Thank you so much.
Hare
Thank you very
Krishna.
much.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.